The ledger lay open, its crisp pages a stark contrast to the dust and despair settling over the Western Territories in 1893. Each entry, a name, a sum, a date of default, chronicled the relentless march of economic ruin. The panic had arrived, not with a bang, but with the quiet, insidious hum of banks failing, credit drying up, and foreclosures stacking like cordwood. For Mr. Silas Thorne, the town's banker, it was simply business. His duty, he often reminded himself, was to the institution, to the numbers. Sentiment had no place in solvency.
Join us now and explore the legends of the dust.
Today's business concerned the Miller family, their meager farm, and, tragically, their indenture. Their debt, a consequence of sickness and a single bad harvest, was too deep, their collateral too sparse. The only remaining asset of value in the eyes of the law, their labor. A chilling truth in an age supposedly beyond chains, yet the mechanisms of debt bondage still turned, silent and efficient, under the guise of legal process. The auction was set for high noon, a public spectacle of private tragedy. Silas felt no joy, no malice, only the cold, unyielding pressure of his own ledgers demanding balance. The crowd gathered slowly, a reluctant assembly drawn by morbid curiosity and a shared sense of dread. Neighbors, farmers, townsfolk, all felt the tightening grip of the panic, each wondering if their name would be next on the auctioneer's list. They watched as the Miller family stood, huddled and defeated, near the makeshift platform. A father, a mother, two young children, their faces etched with a profound, almost primal fear. Their gaze rarely met anyone else's, fixed instead on the dusty ground as if hoping to disappear into it. The auctioneer, a man named Fletcher, cleared his throat, his voice raspy from years of shouting over livestock and lumber. He disliked these sales, the human element always making his stomach churn, but a job was a job. He began the usual preamble, the legal jargon a hollow echo in the tense silence. His eyes scanned the small crowd, searching for a familiar face, anyone who might offer a bid, however small, for a portion of the miller's future labor. There were none, only averted gazes. Then, a figure emerged from the shadow of the general store awning. Old Elias, the blacksmith. He was a man carved from the same iron he so skillfully worked, his face a roadmap of a hard-lived life, but his eyes held a quiet intensity, a wisdom earned through resilience. Elias was a freedman, one of the few black men in town who owned his own business, a testament to decades of relentless toil and an uncommon frugality. His hands, calloused and thick, perpetually smelled of coal smoke and quenched steel. He carried nothing but his worn leather money pouch, and almost as an extension of his own arm, his favorite forging hammer. Not a tool for sale, but a symbol. It was blackened with age, its head smooth from countless strikes, its handle custom-fitted to his grip. This hammer had built his life, one swing at a time, one penny earned, one reputation forged. He moved with a slow, deliberate gait, settling near the front, his presence a quiet anchor in the eddy of despair. Fletcher, the auctioneer, paused, a flicker of surprise in his weary eyes. Elias rarely attended these public distress sales, preferring the solitude of his forge. He offered a polite nod, which Elias returned with a slight inclination of his head. The bidding began, or rather, it sputtered. A local merchant offered a pittance for the father's labor, another for the mother's. The children, barely teenagers, were bundled together, their value assessed solely on their potential for future chores. The bids were insultingly low, reflecting not just the economic climate, but a cruel calculus of desperation. Elias listened, his face unreadable, his gaze fixed on the Miller family, particularly the smallest child clutching her mother's skirt. He remembered his own past, the feeling of being an object, a commodity. He had sworn long ago that if he ever had the means, he would never let such a shadow fall over another soul if he could help it. He would not, could not, stand idly by. He would intervene, not for glory, but for dignity. As the bids dwindled to a shameful few, Fletcher prepared to finalize the sale of the Miller children to a distant farmer known for his harsh ways. The man was notorious for working hands to the bone, a grim prospect even in the best of times. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken judgment and the palpable despair of the family on the platform. Mrs. Miller shielded her youngest, a girl no older than 6, pulling her closer as if to absorb the shame that radiated from the proceedings. Mr. Miller's shoulders slumped, the defeat evident in every line of his posture. He had toiled his entire life, honest and hard-working, only to be stripped of everything by forces beyond his control. The panic had been a slow-motion avalanche, crushing families like his, leaving them exposed and vulnerable to the cold logic of the market. Fletcher, the auctioneer, swallowed hard. His gaze flickered towards Silas Thorne, the banker, who stood impassively at the edge of the crowd, his face a mask of professional detachment. Silas represented the system, the unforgiving apparatus that allowed such transactions to occur, even if he personally found them distasteful. The banker's presence was a reminder that this was not a moral failing, but a financial one. A debt, legally incurred, legally enforced. The collective silence of the townsfolk was damning, a testament to their own precarious positions. No one had enough to spare, or perhaps no one dared to challenge the established order. The concept of debt bondage, though not chattel slavery, still carried the heavy chains of a grim past, a shadow that stretched long across the American West. Elias watched. His hands, usually busy shaping stubborn metal, now rested, one on his money pouch, the other gently clasping the familiar heavy head of his forging hammer. The metal felt cool, solid, a constant in a world increasingly unstable. He thought of his own journey, the arduous road from servitude to self-reliance. Every strike of his hammer, every bead of sweat that fell into his forge, had been a defiant act against the forces that sought to diminish him. He had built his life, his business, his quiet reputation, piece by painstaking piece. His savings were not vast, but they were real, earned with integrity, kept safe not just for himself, but for a future he believed in. He had witnessed the slow strangulation of communities by economic downturns before, but this panic felt different, more systemic, more ruthless in its reach. It was not merely about lost crops or bad investments. It was about human value being reduced to a line item in a ledger. "Going once, they're going twice," Fletcher called out, his voice tinged with a weariness that went beyond simple fatigue. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The Miller family braced themselves, their eyes closed, awaiting the inevitable pronouncement of their fragmentation. The smallest child whimpered softly against her mother's skirt. It was then, in that moment of profound despair, that the silence was broken. A deep, resonant voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the oppressive atmosphere. $1,000. Every head in the square snapped towards Elias. The blacksmith stood tall, his presence suddenly amplified, his quiet demeanor replaced by an undeniable force of will. The very air seemed to crackle with disbelief. $1,000. In 1893, amidst a crippling panic, it was an astronomical sum, enough to buy a small homestead, a thriving business, a comfortable life. Silas Thorne, the banker, pushed through the stunned crowd, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. He knew Elias was solvent, respected, but $1,000 for a family's debt. It was not only unheard of, it defied all conventional financial wisdom of the time. Fletcher, the auctioneer, stammered, his carefully constructed professional facade crumbling. "Mr. Elias, for all of them," he managed, his voice barely a whisper. Elias simply nodded, his gaze unwavering as he met the auctioneer's astonished eyes. "For their freedom," he clarified, his voice quiet but firm. "The entire family, paid in full." He unlatched his worn leather pouch, revealing stacks of carefully folded bills, crisp and new, hard-earned, saved penny by penny over half a century of relentless labor. The sight of the money, real and tangible, was more shocking than the bid itself. It was a defiant act of compassion, a powerful challenge to the cold indifference of the times. The crisp greenbacks fresh from the bank were carefully counted by a still-stunned Fletcher. His hands, usually so swift and practiced, trembled slightly as he verified each stack, his eyes darting between the money, the Miller family, and the stoic blacksmith. Silas Thorne, the banker, stepped forward, his earlier composure completely shattered. He took a bundle of the bills, scrutinizing them, then nodding slowly. The sum was exact. $1,000. It was an unimpeachable payment, undeniable proof that the debt, so meticulously recorded in his ledger, was now eradicated. The sheer weight of that financial transaction, executed with such quiet resolve, silenced any lingering doubt or cynical murmur from the crowd. Elias had not just made a bid, he had presented a fact, solid and irrefutable as an anvil. The Miller family, who moments before had been staring at the ground, now looked up, their faces a mixture of disbelief and overwhelming, almost painful relief. Mrs. Miller gasped, clutching her youngest child tighter. But this time, it was a gesture of protection from the world's harshness, not from its judgment. Tears streamed down Mr. Miller's weathered cheeks, his earlier shame replaced by a profound, trembling gratitude. They were no longer commodities. They were free. The weight of the world seemed to lift from their shoulders, replaced by a sudden, dizzying lightness, a freedom they hadn't dared to dream possible just moments ago. The square remained in an awed silence, a collective breath held, then slowly exhaled. Elias, having paid, simply turned and walked towards the Miller family. He didn't offer grand speeches or dramatic gestures. His hammer, the symbol of his life's labor, remained firmly in his grasp, its weight a familiar comfort. Instead, his movements were deliberate, imbued with a quiet dignity. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird. It was a simple thing, perhaps something he had whittled during a quiet evening, its wings delicately spread as if in mid-flight. He knelt slightly, his old knees creaking, and handed it to the youngest Miller child, who stared up at him with wide, hopeful eyes, her fear slowly giving way to wonder. "This," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper, yet it carried clearly in the stillness, "is for the day you forget what it means to be afraid." He then rose and turned to Mr. Miller, his gaze conveying a silent understanding, a shared history of struggle and the profound weight of this new beginning. There was no pity in Elias's eyes, only a deep, abiding respect and an acknowledgement of a common humanity. "Come by the forge tomorrow," he offered, a flicker of a smile touching his lips, the first genuine warmth to break through his stoicism. "There's always work for honest hands, and your family. They have a place here, a real place." It was not an offer of charity, but of opportunity, of belonging, a chance to rebuild, to reforge their lives, not as debtors, but as integral members of the community, standing on their own 2 feet. Fletcher, the auctioneer, looked at the crowd, then back at Elias, a profound respect dawning in his weary eyes. He had presided over countless sales, seen every shade of human desperation and greed, but never before had he witnessed such an act of pure, unadulterated grace. Silas Thorne, the banker, closed his ledger with a soft thud. The numbers were balanced, the debt cleared, but the human equation had been rewritten in a way he hadn't thought possible. Elias had not just bought a family's freedom, he had bought back a piece of the community's soul, affirming that even in the darkest hours of economic despair, human dignity held a value beyond any price. The quiet blacksmith, with his calloused hands and a lifetime of integrity, had struck a blow for humanity, forging hope from the embers of despair. It was a moment that would ripple through the small town, a testament to the enduring power of compassion against the cold logic of the market. The Miller family stood for a long moment simply breathing. The youngest child still clutched the carved wooden bird, her small fingers tracing its delicate form, a tangible anchor in a world that had just tilted on its axis. Mr. Miller, though still tearful, slowly straightened his shoulders. The deep lines of worry around his eyes seemed to soften, almost imperceptibly. Mrs. Miller, released from the crushing dread, finally allowed herself a small, shaky smile, a fragile bloom after a long winter. They were no longer objects of sale, no longer bound by debt. They were people, free people. The relief was not an explosion, but a slow, profound thaw, warming them from the inside out. They looked at Elias, not with fawning gratitude, but with an immense, silent respect, an understanding that transcended words. Their journey towards rebuilding, though daunting, was now their own. The townsfolk, who had witnessed the entire spectacle, dispersed slowly, their usual chatter replaced by a thoughtful quiet. The air, once heavy with shared apprehension, now hummed with something different, a quiet revelation. They had seen the stark reality of the panic, its impersonal cruelty, but they had also seen a counterforce, a powerful assertion of human connection. Elias, the quiet blacksmith, had always been respected for his craftsmanship and his unwavering honesty, but this act, this transcended simple respect. It had etched his name into the very fabric of their community, not as a hero seeking accolades, but as a silent guardian of human dignity. His actions had reminded them all of what they truly valued, beyond the dictates of commerce and the cold calculations of debt. Silas Thorne, the banker, returned to his office, the crisp counted bills still slightly warm in his hand. He meticulously entered the transaction into his ledger, the final balancing entry for the Miller family's debt. But as he closed the heavy book, the usual satisfaction of a completed transaction was absent. Instead, a lingering unease settled over him. Elias had not merely paid a debt, he had paid a profound human cost, a cost that Silas, in his professional capacity, had been blind to, or perhaps unwilling to see. The cold logic of the market, which he championed, had been momentarily eclipsed by the warmth of a singular, selfless act. It was a disquieting thought, a crack in the edifice of his calculated world. Fletcher, the auctioneer, packed away his gavel and his forms, his movements unusually slow. He had seen countless families broken by the economic forces of the frontier, had been the instrument of their dispersal. But today was different. Elias's intervention had cast a new light on his role, on the very nature of his work. He was a cog in the system, yes, but he had just witnessed an act that defied the system's bleakest outcome. The memory of the little girl's face, changing from terror to wonder as she accepted the wooden bird, would stay with him. It was a rare, beautiful glimpse of redemption, a flicker of hope in a profession often devoid of it. Elias himself returned to his forge, the worn hammer still in his grasp. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the dusty street. He stoked the coals, the familiar hiss of the bellows a comforting rhythm. He did not linger in the square, did not seek any acknowledgement beyond the quiet understanding shared with the Millers. His act had not been for public acclaim, but for a deeply held conviction that some debts were too high to pay with human lives. His life's work, forged in sweat and integrity, had culminated in this moment, a testament to the quiet power of a lifetime of ethical labor. The Panic of 1893 would continue its ravages, but in one small western town, a quiet blacksmith had reaffirmed the enduring value of human spirit, a dignity that no economic downturn could truly extinguish. He worked his forge well into the evening, the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil echoing through the twilight, a sound of resilience. The sun rose the following morning, casting a golden light over the dusty western town. But for the Miller family, it felt like a brand new dawn. They arrived at Elias's forge before the first sparks flew, their faces still showing the strain of their recent ordeal, but now imbued with a fragile hope. Mr. Miller, though weary, moved with a purpose, eager to repay the immeasurable kindness with honest labor. Elias, true to his word, had work for them. He wasn't simply offering a handout, he was offering a pathway back to self-sufficiency, a chance to rebuild their dignity through the sweat of their own brows. Mrs. Miller helped with the smaller tasks, sweeping the shop, organizing tools, her movements lightened by the absence of oppressive fear. The children, initially shy, soon found themselves drawn to the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, the dance of fire and metal. The youngest still carried the wooden bird, a silent talisman of their new beginning. Over the weeks and months that followed, the forge became more than just a place of business. It became a quiet sanctuary, a testament to resilience in the face of widespread despair. The Panic of 1893 continued its relentless grind across the nation, swallowing farms and fortunes. But in this corner of the West, a different narrative was unfolding. The Miller family, under Elias's patient guidance, slowly regained their footing. Mr. Miller learned the intricate craft of blacksmithing, his hands, once broken by debt, now shaping metal with a growing skill. The community watched, not with judgment, but with a renewed sense of their own collective strength. Elias had shown them that even when the systems failed, when institutions crumbled, the bonds of humanity and the power of individual integrity could still hold fast. Elias himself felt a profound, quiet peace. His act had not brought him fame or riches. Indeed, it had significantly depleted his life's savings, but the emptiness in his money pouch was more than compensated by the richness in his spirit. He watched the Miller family flourish, their laughter occasionally echoing through his forge, a sound more precious than any coin. His hammer, the extension of his will and his life's dedication, now seemed to ring with a deeper purpose. Each strike was not just shaping metal but affirming a truth, that hard work, honesty and compassion were the true foundations of any lasting value. His old wise eyes often scanned the horizon, aware that the world beyond his forge remained chaotic. But here, within these smoky walls, a small piece of it had been set right, reforged. The story of the quiet blacksmith who bought a family's freedom became a local legend, passed down in hushed tones around campfires and dinner tables. It wasn't a tale of grand adventure or violent heroism, but of a different kind of bravery. The courage to stand against the tide of despair, to uphold human dignity when the world seemed determined to strip it away. Elias had not sought to change the entire economic system, nor had he achieved a public triumph that resonated across newspapers. His was a quieter victory, a deeply personal affirmation of his own principles, which radiated outwards to touch and heal those around him. The catharsis was not a sudden explosion of joy, but a slow, steady reconstruction of trust and belonging within the scarred landscape of the panic. Elias eventually retired, his hands too old for the heaviest work, but the forge continued under Mr. Miller's capable hands. The wooden bird, a little faded but still cherished, sat on a shelf above the anvil, a permanent reminder of the day a quiet act of grace changed everything. It was a testament to the idea that some of the most powerful forces in history are not revolutions or declarations, but the individual choices made with quiet conviction. The tale of Elias, the blacksmith, reminds us that true wealth isn't always measured in dollars, but in the quiet acts of courage that define a community, in the dignity extended and the bonds reaffirmed. What quiet acts of heroism do you believe truly change the course of history, even if they never make it into the headlines? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more tales from the frontier, where courage and conviction often defied the odds, where human spirit always found a way.